All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Greetings and peace to those who are out there watching. So today I'm going to start this video about Tawanna Brawley, the Tawanna Brawley situation that took place, that happened back in November 28th of 1987. There was a rape allegation going on about a young woman who was 15 years old from New York. She was supposed to be found in a body bag or in a trash bag covered with feces or whatnot. And she said that she was raped by some white men. So later on, there became a twist to that story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present some information about the whole Tawanna Brawley situation. And at the time, Al Sharpton, before he got into the political arena, he was a reverend, right? And then Alton Maddox, who was an attorney, they was all on the case. Bill Cosby, was behind her, supporting her, all this other stuff. So let's go ahead and let's look into the story. So I got some information to pull up. So here's the story about Tawanna Brawley rape allegation. All right. So it says that she was born on December 15, 1971. She's an African-American woman from Wilberger's Falls, New York, who accused 4 white men of raping her in November of 1987. So on November 28, 1987, Brawley was found in a trash bag. She had racial slurs written on her body and was covered in feces. Brawley accused 4 white men of having raped her. The charges received widespread national attention in part because of the appalling condition in which she had been left, her young age, 15, and the professional status of the persons she accused of the crime, including police officers and a prosecuting attorney. Brawley's advisors, Al Sharpton, Alton Maddox, and C. Vernon Mason, also helped in bringing the case to the national prominence. All right, and it says, after hearing evidence, a grand jury concluded in October 1988 that Brawley had not been the victim of a forcible sexual assault and that she herself had created the appearance of such an attack. Stephen Pagons, the New York prosecutor who Brawley had accused of as one of her assailants, later successfully sued Brawley and her 3 advisors for defamation. It says Brawley had initially received considerable support from the African American community. Some suggest that Brawley was victimized by biased reporting that had credited racial stereotypes. The mainstream media's cover drew heated criticism from the African American press and from many Black leaders who professed to believe the teenager in her narrative. The grand jury's conclusion decreased support for Brawley and her advisors. Brawley's family have continued to assert that the allegation was true. Hey, Candy, how you doing? Thank you for coming in. All right. So now let's look at the origin of the case. The origin, of course, it says that it happened on the 28th of 1987. Tawanna Brawley, who had been missing for 4 days from her home in Wilberger Falls, New York, was found seemingly unconscious and unresponsive, lying in a garbage bag several feet from an apartment where she had once lived. Her clothing was torn and burnt, her body smeared with feces. She was taken to the emergency room where the word KKK, nigger, and bitch were discovered written on her torso with charcoal. It says a detective from the sheriff's juvenile Juvenile Aid Bureau, among others, was summoned to interview Brawley, but she remained unresponsive. The family requested a black officer, which the police department was able to provide. Brawley described as having an extremely spacey look on her face, communicating with the officer with nods of head, shrugs of the shoulder, and written notes. The interview lasted 20 minutes, during which she uttered only one word, neon. Through gestures and writing, however, she indicated she had been raped repeatedly in a wooded area by 6 white men, at least one of whom she said was a police officer. A sexual assault kit was administered, and police began building a case. Brawley provided no names or description of her assailants. She later told others that there had been no rape. Now that's when it became twisted. When she told other people that there was no rape. Only other kinds of sexual abuse. Forensic tests found no evidence. Forensic tests found no evidence that a sexual assault of any kind had occurred. There was no evidence of exposure to elements, which would have been expected in a victim held for several days in the woods at a time when the temperature dropped below freezing at night. Somebody put, there's no way she did all that to herself. I believe her story. Okay, but here's the thing. This is according to the forensics. The forensics did the testing on her. They didn't find any evidence that she was sexually assaulted. They didn't find any evidence that she was either sexually assaulted and any sign of abuse. Now, if the forensics can't find any evidence on that, then it becomes questionable as to whether this story is true or not. It becomes questionable. And then it says here there was no evidence of exposure to the elements. So what really happened? Now, me and us would like to believe that this is what happened. But if forensics can't find at that time, because she had to go to the forensics and get testing done. And they couldn't find anything that validate her story. So let's just continue. It says public response. The initial public response to Brawley's story was mostly sympathetic. Bill Cosby offered a $25,000 reward for information on the case, while Don King pledged $100,000 towards Brawley's education. In December of 1987, more than 1,000 people, including Nation Islam leader Louis Farrakhan, marched through the streets of New Borough, New York, in support of Brawley. Brawley's claim in the case captured headlines across the country. Public rallies were held denouncing the incident when civil rights activist Al Sharpton with attorneys Alton Maddox and C. Vernon Mason began handling Brawley's publicity. The case quickly became highly controversial. Sharpton, Maddox, and Mason generated a national media sensation. The three said that the officials all the way up to the state government were trying to cover up the defendants in the case because they were white. They further suggest that the Ku Klux Klan, the Irish Republican Army, and the Mafia had conspired with the U.S. government in the alleged cover-up. Harry Chris Jr., a police officer who committed suicide shortly after the period when Brawley was allegedly held captive, became a suspect in the case. Stephen Progons, an assistant district attorney in Dutchess County, New York, attempted to establish an alibi for Chris, stating that he had been with Chris during that period of time. Sharpton, Maddox, and Mason then said that Chris and Progons were two of the rapists. They also accused Progons of being a racist based on Chris' suicide note. The New York Times reported that he killed himself because his girlfriend ended their relationship shortly before his death, and because he was upset that he was unable to become a state trooper. All right, so then it goes on to say that the mainstream media's coverage drew heated criticism from the African American press and leaders for its treatment of the teenager. They cited the leaking and publication of photos taken of her at the hospital and the revelation of her name despite her being underage. In addition, critics were concerned that Brawley had been left in the custody of her mother, stepfather, and advisors rather than being given protection by the state. In opinion piece in the New York Times, Martha Miles and Richard L. Madden wrote, state laws provide that if a child appears to have been sexually molested, then the Child Protective Services Agency is supposed to take jurisdiction and custody of that child. Now, Tawanna Brawley was 15 at the time of the incident. If that had been done early on, the agency would have given her psychiatric attention and preserved evidence of rape. Sharpton's former aide, Perry McKinnon, said that Sharpton, Maddox, and Mason were unconcerned with Brawley and were using the case to take over the town, as he heard Sharpton say that the case could make him and Brawley's other two advisors the biggest niggers in New York. In June of 1988, at the height of the controversy surrounding the case, a poll showed a gap of 34 percentage points between blacks, 51%, and whites, 85% on the question of whether Brawley was lying. So there's as you can see, there's conflicts. There was conflict because people thought that Al Sharpton and Alton Maddox were using this case as a way to build a name, a portfolio for themselves. And they weren't very sincere about it. They didn't really care about Tawanna's situation. And then there was people that had mixed feelings that she was lying and making it up. So let's see what they were talking about here on the grand jury. So, yeah, let me go ahead and read this. Grand jury hearings. Under the authority of New York State's Attorney General Robert Abrams, a grand jury was called to hear evidence on October the 6th, 1988. The grand jury released its 170-page report that concluded Brawley had not been abducted, assaulted, raped, or sodomized, as Brawley and her advisors said. The report further concluded that the unsworn public allegation against Dutchess County Assistant District Attorney Steve Pregones were false and had no basis in fact. Before issuing the report, the grand jury heard from 180 witnesses and saw 250 exhibits and recorded more than 6,000 pages of testimonies. In the decision, the grand jury noted many problems with Brawley's story. Among these were the rape kit result did not indicate sexual assault. Let's look at that again. Among these were the rape kit results that did not indicate sexual assault. That's one evidence. Additionally, despite saying she had been held captive outdoors for days, Brawley was not suffering from hypothermia, was well nourished, and appeared to have brushed her teeth recently. Despite her clothing being charred, there were no burns on her body. Although a shoe she was wearing was cut through, Brawley had no injuries to her foot. The racial epithets written on her were upside down, which led to the suspicion that Brawley had written the words. Testimony from her schoolmates indicated she had attended a local party during the time of her supposed abduction. One witness claimed to have observed Brawley's climbing into the garage. One witness claimed to have observed Brawley's climbing into the garbage bag. The feces on her body were identified as coming from her neighbor's dog. Brawley never testified despite a subpoena ordering her to do so. And on June 6, 1988, Tawanna's mother, Glenda Brawley, was sentenced to 30 days in prison and fined $250 for the contempt of court for refusing to testify at the grand jury hearing. She evaded arrest by hiding in churches and, with the police failing to arrest her, arguing it would lead to violence. The Brawley family then fled New York State, traveling around the country for several months before settling in Virginia Beach. So now, after reading all that, it becomes twisted. So let's go back. And I'm going to highlight some things about the story. Okay, so where I got highlighted, right? It says, in the decision, grand jury noted many problems with Brawley's story. Among these were that the rape kit result did not indicate sexual assault. So, if there's no proof of sexual assault based on that rape kit, then what does that say about the story? That's one evidence they use. Now let's look at another evidence. Additionally, despite saying she had been held captive outdoors for days, Brawley was not suffering from hypothermia, was well nourished, and appeared to have brushed her teeth recently. That's another case. That's another evidence they're using. Despite her clothing being charred, there were no burns on her body. Although a shoe she was wearing was cut through, Brawley had no injury to her foot. That's the third one. They didn't find any injuries to her foot. The racial epithets written on her were upside down, which led to suspicion that Brawley had written the words. So if the words was written upside down, then obviously she had to write it herself. Then it says the testimony from her schoolmates indicated she attended to local party during the time of her supposed abduction. So she was sneaking out and going out and party. And the concept about the feces on her body was coming from her neighbor's dog. So on top of that, her family fled New York to avoid arrest because they did not want to testify in the courtroom. And due to that, they ended up being at Virginia Beach in Virginia. So I could see a good reason why people did not want to believe the story, and they found it to be very false because of these things. And the fact that her mother was sentenced 30 days in prison and fined $250 for refusing to testify. And they end up fleeing to New York afterward. Fleeing to Virginia to get away from testifying in the courtroom. It's quite interesting. It's quite interesting. Okay. So let's go down. It says possible motives. Much of the grand jury evidence pointed to a possible motive for Brawley's falsifying the incident, trying to avoid violent punishment from her mother and particularly her stepfather, Ralph King. Witnesses testified that Glenda Brawley had previously beaten her daughter for running away and for spending nights with boys. King had a history of violence that included stabbing his first wife 14 times, which later escalated into him shooting and killing her. There was considerable evidence that King could and would violently attack Brawley when Brawley had been arrested on a shoplifting charge the previous May, King attempted to beat her for the offense while at the police station. Witnesses also described King as having talked about his stepdaughter in a sexualizing manner. On the day of her alleged disappearance, Brawley had skipped school to visit her boyfriend, Todd Buston, who was serving a 6-month jail sentence. When Buston's mother, with whom she had visited Buston in jail, urged her to get home before she got in trouble, Brawley told her, "I'm already in trouble." She described how angry King was over a previous incident of her staying out late. Cover up by racists. Easy for them to do that, especially back then. I have trouble believing the evidence, and I believe the family fled for their safety. Okay. Then it also goes in to say that neighbors also told the grand jury that in February they overheard Glenda Brawley saying to King, "You shouldn't have took the money because after it all comes out, they're going to find out the truth." Another neighbor heard Mrs. Brawley say, "They know we're lying and they're going to find out and come and get us." You shouldn't have took the money because after it all comes out, they're going to find out the truth. They know we're lying. They're going to find out and come and get us. So it wasn't just Tawanna that was in this. Her parents was behind all of this as well because they saw it as a way to earn revenue. So they figured if they could lie about an incident or story that did not really happen, then they could earn some profit and they could make some revenue. That's what it was. They can receive the donation. Okay. Also, it says, in April of 1989, New York Newsday published claims by a boyfriend of Brawley's, Daryl Rodriguez, that she had told him the story was fabricated with help from her mother. So again, her mother was behind all this. Her mother told her, "Hey, say this is what happened to you, and this is how it happened. So that way we can get some money." So her mama had money in mind. That's what, and this is what people are saying. People that know her family. Okay, that's what neighbors are saying. These are her closest acquaintance, associates, friends. They're saying that story that they've been telling all along was a lie. Let's continue. Hold on. Now, this is her boyfriend that she had told him the story was fabricated with the help from her mother in order to avert the wrath of her stepfather. Writing about the case in a 2004 book on perception of racial violence, sociologist Jonathan Markovitz concluded that it is reasonable to suggest that Brawley's fear of the kind of suffering that she must have gone through must have been truly staggering if they were enough to force her to resort to cutting her hair, covering herself in feces, and crawling into a garbage bag. So it goes deeper than that. That means that basically she was suffering abuse at home. And she was suffering to the point that she decided to do these, she decided to do something very insane and make up a story behind it just to gain attention. And her parents look at it, hey, this is the way for us to make money. This is a way for us to earn money so we can go ahead and just get out of town and do what we want to do. So they was using her to tell a story, to make up a story so they can receive donation. That was the bottom line. Let's go back and read this part one more time right here. Just think about it. It is reasonable to suggest that Brawley's fear and the kind of suffering that she must have gone through must have been truly staggering if they were enough to force her to resort to cutting her hair, covering herself in feces, and crawling into a garbage bag. Mm. All right, so the aftermath. The case highlighted mistrust of legal institution within the Black community. Legal scholar Patricia J. Williams wrote in 1991 that the teenager has been a victim of some unspeakable crime, no matter how she got there, no matter who did it to her, and even if she did it to herself. Mm. These comments aroused controversy as well as Susanna Sherry responded to Williams in her book, Beyond All Reason, The Radical Assault on Truth in American Law. Writing, the radical multiculturalist seemed unwilling to differentiate between Brawley's fantasized rape and another woman's real one, and differences to the distinction between fact and fiction minimize real suffering by implying that it is no worse than imagining or self-inflicting suffering. All right, so and anybody remember the Spike Lee movie called Do the Right Thing? Reviewing Spike Lee's film Doing the Right Thing, cultural critic Stanley Crouch, and I think he recently passed away. Yeah, Stanley Crouch wrote negatively of men like Vernon Mason, who sold out a good reputation in a cynical bid for political power by pimping real victims of racism in order to smokescreen Tawanna Brawley's lies. On May 21st of 1990, Alton H. Maddox was indefinitely suspended by the appellate division of the state Supreme Court in Brooklyn after failing to appear before a disciplinary hearing to answer allegations regarding his conduct in the Brawley case. Mm. Okay, and it says in 1998, Pagans was awarded $345,000 through a lawsuit for defamation of character that he had brought against Sharpton, Maddox, and Mason. Pagans initially sought $395 million. The jury found Sharpton liable for making 7 defamatory statements about Pagans, Maddox for 2, and Mason for 1. The jury deadlocked on 4 of the 22 statements over which Pagans had sued, and it found 8 statements to be non-defamatory. In a later interview, Pagans said the turmoil caused by the accusation of Brawley and her advisor had cost him his first marriage and much personal grief. And then it goes on to say that Pagans also sued Brawley. She defaulted by not appearing at the trial, and the judge ordered her to pay Pagans damages of $185,000. The $65,000 judgment levied against Al Sharpton was paid for him in 2001 by supporters, including attorney Johnny Cochran and businessman Earl G. Graves Jr. In December of 2012, the New York Post reported that Maddox had paid his judgment of $97,000 and Mason was making payments on the $188,000 which he owed. Good God Almighty. Brawley reportedly had not made any payments. The following month, a court ordered her wages garnished to pay Pagans. In a 1997 appearance, Brawley maintained she did not invent the story. She still had supporters. In November of 2007, Brawley's stepfather and mother, in a 20th anniversary feature for the New York Daily News, contended the attack happened. How could we make this up and take down the state of New York? We were just regular people. Glenda Brawley said they had asked New York State Attorney General Alex Splitzler and Governor Andrew Como to reopen the case. They also said that Brawley would speak at any They also said that Brawley would speak at any legal proceedings. As of 2013, Brawley lives in Virginia under a new name. Okay. So now, again, there's a lot of twists to this story. The story is very twisted. So the last part, it says she lives in Virginia under a new name. So if she's innocent, and I'm just asking, if she did not tell a lie and she was innocent of the crime, then why did she have to change her name? And why is she refusing to testify in the courtroom? Why did her parents refuse to testify? If the story was true and it wasn't fabricated, then why they're not testifying? Why they not stand on her behalf? Why did the courts had to go to trial without the mother and the daughter and stepfather? That's why I'm wondering. But let's look more into this. And for those of you who don't know who Tawanna Brawley is, I'm gonna show you. Okay. All right, this is Tawanna Brawley. And that's Al Sharpton. Looking like somebody's auntie. Looking like somebody's auntie that just got out of church. Looking like somebody back in the 1960s. looking like an old pimp. With a fresh perm and everything. An old pimp that transitioned into a reverend. Reverend Al Sharpton. Look at him. But nah, this is Tawanna Brawley right here. Okay. And this is what she looked like the last time they spotted her. Okay, this is her. This is what she looked like now from the last time they spotted her. Okay, so and then let's show the one that they was doing all this marching. Yep, they was doing that marching. There they go, right there. That's her. That's Al Sharpton, and I'm assuming that that's Mr. Mason, cause yep, that's everybody in the background. They marching. Oh boy. All right, so let's talk about, here's HuffingtonPost.com. All right, they wrote this back in August of 2013. It says Tawanna Brawley rape hoax led to defamation damage payout 26 years later. Now this was written in 2013. Okay, let's skip on down. It says 11 years after Tawanna Brawley's sensational story was discovered, former prosecutor Steve Pergone successfully sued Brawley, her attorney, and Al Sharpton, who had gotten involved with the case, for slandering, according to the Poughkeepsie Journal. Although the others paid up for years, Brawley refused to pay the $185,000 in damage, worth closer to $400,000 with interest. Now it says Brawley now works in Richmond, Virginia as a nurse at the Laurels of Bon Air Nursing Home under a different name, Tawanna B. Gutierrez. According to the Journal, a court has ordered Brawley's employer to garnish her wages in order to begin paying Pagans. So far, Pagans have received around $3,700. The Journal reports. All right. So, and it says, after years of living under the radar, after years of living under the radar, Brawley and her family were tracked to Virginia several years ago, according to the New York's Daily News. The Daily News found her parents in 2007 living in a rural area of the state where they broke their silence in order to defend Brawley. How could we make this up and take down the state of New York? We were just regular people. Brawley's mother, Glenda, told Daily News, "We should be millionaires." Wait a minute. We should be millionaires. Listen to it again. How could we make this up and take down the state of New York? We were just regular people. Brawley's mother, Glenda, told the Daily News, "We should be millionaires." We should be millionaires. So it goes to show you all she cared about was the money. She didn't care about the interest of her daughter. All she cared about was the money. You worrying about being a millionaire and not worrying about the case, not worrying about what had happened to your daughter. So that right there alone makes it sound real fishy. Unfazed, Pagron and his lawyer, Gary Bolnick, decided to file for the wage garnishment in January, according to the New York Post. Pagons said his waited a long time for vindication, added that it's not simply about the money. It's a long time coming. Pagons told the Post in a recent interview, "Every week she'll think of me out. She can simply tell the truth." Still, Pagone and his attorney cash. It's not going to change anybody's life. Bolnick told the Journal, "The fact that she is forced to pay something is very important and very symbolic. It would be nice if she would pay off the entire judgment. Obviously, she's going to make us work for that." All right. So, with that being said, in all conclusion, this story was the most controversial story ever. It was the most controversial story. To this day, people still skeptical. And people still blame Al Sharpton. And Ultimadox for their role. What I'm looking at is, if it was the case that she was raped, it would have been a different story. It was more evidence to prove that. But because of the evidence that was based off the forensics, right? Based off the rape kit, and based off of the whole investigation, there was no proof to align with the fact that she was raped. Because if there was a rape kit, now wait a minute, the rape kit would have shown proof. They would have shown proof of DNA. Because DNA is the most important factor in this. If somebody been raped, they can show proof. And how they can prove it? They can prove it through the DNA. They can prove it to see if there was any type of bruises, any type of scar, or anything that indicates a form of violation. They couldn't find that. So they looking at the story like, okay, well, basically this woman been making up some shit. She's been lying. And she wasn't in it by herself. It was her mother. Her mother was behind all of this. Her mother and stepfather. They was doing it because they wanted money. And I think she was doing it because she wanted attention. So Tawanna Brawley wanted attention while her parents wanted money. Because as I read in that article, her mother gave an interview to Daily News and said that we should be millionaires by now. We should be millionaires by now. So that goes to show you that she cared more about the money than about what happened to her daughter. So that lets you know right there the story was fabricated the whole entire time. It was falsified. And I hate to say that because I'm a person that I'm against rape. I'm against molestation. I'm against anything that violates someone, especially if it's against their will. Especially when it comes towards the women. I am against rape, abuse, all of that. But if you're sitting up here and you're making your story obvious and people can point out some things and see some red flags, then it becomes questionable. And there was a lot of red flags in her story. And it was too many witnesses that was coming forward to say that she fabricated. She lied about it. It was too many people that was coming forward to say that it was a lie. She even told somebody, her boyfriend, that the story was made up. So that should tell you right there in itself. Okay, but here's the thing, Ken. Hold on. You put, my mother always cared more about money and lawsuits than she would care about my sexual assault. I believe there's plenty of mothers like mine, Tawanna's, and unfortunately. Okay, if you care more about money and not care about the crime in itself, what does that say about you? What does that say about that person if that person is only focusing on money? You didn't listen to when I was reading the paragraph. She said we should be millionaires by now. So that goes to show that money was her main agenda. It wasn't about what happened to her daughter. She was trying to figure out a way how to get some money because she said we should be millionaires by now. So that goes to show you that money was her main object. So she used this story as a way to generate revenue or try to attempt to make money. What she did was evil. Yeah, I'm not gonna say the mama is evil, but what she did was an evil act. She acted on an evil intention. She did. And then Tawanna Brawley changing her name. And then they go under the radar for a long period of time. It becomes very suspicious. That's all I'm saying. It's very suspicious and the story was very twisted. But anyways, you guys, thank you all for watching. And this your girl, Tiffany. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell. And if you want to go ahead and contribute and donate to what I'm doing, you can go ahead and hit the Cash App, $Tip World. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make sure you share the video. Okay, make sure you share that video. Make sure you like the video and all that great stuff. And whenever I come on, you'll be able to know. You'll be notified by YouTube. So hit that notification bell. All right. Once again, y'all take it easy. I got to get going. May peace and power elevation be to all of you. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.